High in a golden oak tree, nestled between thick branches, stood a tiny wooden door with a leaf-shaped handle. This was Nina's home, a snug hideaway in the heart of the forest. Inside, the walls were lined with woven twigs and bark shelves. Pine cone chairs sat neatly by a mossy rug, and in one corner, Nina carefully polished a shiny red berry before placing it proudly on display. Outside, leaves tumbled in the autumn wind. Nina zipped down the trunk, her basket bouncing on her back, ready to collect even more snacks before winter. At the edge of the riverbank, under the roots of a twisted tree, she unearthed a hidden stash of crunchy nuts, adding them to her growing collection with a satisfied grin. Darting through a hollow log tunnel dotted with mushrooms, Nina passed a group of squirrels chatting, but she didn't stop. She had work to do. On a sunlit stone near a patch of clover, a hedgehog offered her a trade. "One nut for a berry?" he smiled. Nina shook her head and scurried off. Back at her tree, she climbed the rope ladder and pulled it up behind her, sealing her home tight with a bark-covered door. In her pantry, a room carved right into the tree's trunk, rows of carefully labeled jars held berries, seeds, and even tiny mushrooms. She counted her nuts twice, just to be sure. Snuggled in a hammock made of woven vines, Nina whispered, "It's all mine, just in case." Outside, the wind began to howl. Leaves swirled like orange snow as storm clouds rolled across the sky. The next morning, everything had changed. The forest lay quiet and white under a sudden blanket of snow. Winter had come early. In a frozen meadow, animals huddled beneath bushes and tree roots, digging through the snow for food that was no longer there. Meanwhile, Nina sat warm and full in her treehouse, sipping acorn tea beside a glowing lantern and gazing at her heaping shelves. A soft knock echoed through the wood. Nina opened her door a crack and saw the hedgehog shivering beneath a leaf umbrella. "Do you have a nut to spare?" he asked. Nina looked away. "No, I don't," she said quickly, then shut the door. She peeked through a frosty window as the hedgehog trudged off, his tiny footprints vanishing into the snow. That night, in her pine needle bed, Nina tossed and turned. She couldn't stop thinking of her friends out there, hungry and cold. She dreamed of empty trees, lonely skies, and shelves filled with food, but no one to share it with. She woke up with her heart aching. Morning light crept through icicle-lined windows. Nina walked to her pantry, looked at her full shelves, and took down her finest acorn. Outside, the forest was still and white. Clutching a basket of food, Nina followed the hedgehog's tiny paw prints through the snow. Under a leaning tree, she found him curled into a ball. Quietly, she set the acorn beside him. The hedgehog blinked. "You came back." Nina smiled and wrapped her scarf tighter. "I brought enough for two." She hiked up a snow-covered hill and stopped at the raccoon's hollow. Slipping a pouch of seeds inside, she left a note drawn in berry ink. "Stay warm." Near a frozen stream, the rabbit twins peeked from under a snowy log. Nina gently placed bark biscuits by their doorstep and gave a little wave. At the edge of the forest, a fox blinked in surprise as Nina rolled him a chestnut across the snow. One by one, Nina visited her friends, and with every snack she gave, the cold seemed to lift just a little. Back home, her shelves were lighter, but her heart felt fuller than ever. That evening, a soft, golden glow spread through the clearing. Tiny lanterns lit up the trees, and laughter warmed the icy air. Beneath Nina's tree, animals gathered with scarves, blankets, and steaming mugs of tea. "You didn't have to share," the hedgehog said softly, curled on a cushion of leaves. "I wanted to," Nina replied, her eyes twinkling. She passed around her last honeyed nut. The tiniest chipmunk clapped with delight. Stories were told, songs were hummed, snowflakes danced in the moonlight above the firelit clearing. Nina looked up at the stars and whispered, "I thought I'd be lonely without my snacks." A gentle snowflake, shaped like a heart, landed on her paw. She smiled. Inside her treehouse, she moved aside her snack shelves to make room for a long wooden table. The next day, a line of forest animals waited outside her door. Each was greeted with a warm snack and a warmer hug. Nina showed them how to make pine cone pies and roasted root muffins. They cooked together, their laughter rising like smoke into the trees. By nightfall, they shared a feast under glowing mushrooms and twinkling stars. From then on, Nina became known as the forest's kind-hearted snack giver. Her friends brought her gifts in return: painted pebbles, flower scarves, and tiny teacups carved from bark. And on the coldest winter nights, her tree glowed like a lighthouse, warm, welcoming, full of love. Wrapped in her pine needle blanket, Nina curled up by the window, heart full, not of fear, but of friendship. For in the middle of the snowiest winter, she had found the greatest treasure of all: a forest full of friends.